is great to be in the Lord's house this morning. Great to be here, be a part of the day's service. If you'd like to read along with me, I'm going to invite your attention to the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 8. Verses 20, 21, and 22, and 20, and then chapter 9, verse 1. I've been here, I guess, 22 years, I guess, if I count. Could be off a year too. 22 years, if I count. This would be 23 if the Lord will, but every fall, starting of fall, the ending of summer, I have tried to preach this text. It happens every year. So if you wrote down all the dates, you're full in the margin, okay? About half. It's been a few years. But I probably skipped a few years and didn't preach this text. But, this text is kind of pointed and to the point. I know this time of year always marks the beginning of fall for me. I grew up a little bit further north than here, so it kind of changes quicker. But September, I think I've enjoyed this week because it reminds me it's going to get cool sooner rather than later, right? We're going to get some break from heat, right? And it reminds me of this text, and because it reminds me that summer is ending, and that the harvest is coming to an end. And so verse 20 says, the harvest is past, the summer is ended, we're not saved. And I've titled this many different things over the years. I'm sure I titled it in talking about revival. And, you know, I've ended up pastoring in a very different climate than my predecessors in the last, from 1995 to present. First church I started pastoring was in 1995, and I got to hear from older men, and that was about all that was in the ministry beside me, around me, was men that were 20 and 30 years my senior, and they had been in ministry a long time, and they experienced the great revival experiences that went on in the 50s and 60s and the early 70s. And then into the 80s, they plateaued and tapered off. And you look at churches and do survey of churches, that's where churches in America have been for the last since mid-1970s. They have really plateaued and went downhill. And revival services have done the same. And our churches have struggled since then. This church has relatively been the same size, give or take a few years, up, down, and sideways since the mid-70s. This building, our facilities are all built back in then. That's when it grew and prospered, and that's where they stayed. It ain't just true here, that's true a lot of different places. And you know, when we think about where we're at, you know, as far as the time we live in, and I want to talk to you one thing this text does. It declares an end. It declares an end. I want you to notice this. He makes a declaration that some things have come to their fruition, come to their conclusion. He says the harvest is past, the summer is ended, and we're not saved. And I realize that you may be somewhat removed from the ideal of what, in reference to what this text is speaking of, and because Israel was a place that was governed by certain things that happened during the year. during the year, much like in our country, there's a time of planting. There's a time of reaping. And there's a time when it's done. And that is true in that culture where this was spoken as well. It's also true in that culture that they had, in the fall of the year, they had one of their last feasts of the year, and it was called the Feast of Trumpets and the Day of Atonement. It was their culmination of all their feasts throughout the year, the Day of Atonement. The Feast of Trumpets was the blowing of trumpets for 10 days and it was it preceded the Day of Atonement, and so it was an announcement, so to speak. I don't know any of y'all. I think I remember my children came home, wanted to learn to play the trumpet. I had two at least. I'd sent them outside where my neighbors got to hear them play the trumpet. I think we got one now that's trying to play the trumpet too. Now, how good is he yet? They can be loud, right? Diane told me she was glad when y'all quit trying to play the trumpet, because I sent them outside. But they use the trumpet as a means of declaring an end, a preparation for the end coming. The Day of Atonement was coming. And biblically, in the Old Testament, if a person wasn't right, they had not made their life right, they had not done what was necessary to be right with God by the Day of Atonement, they were cut off from the people and from God for a whole year. Now, I need you to understand, and you need to understand this real quickly, is some of y'all don't have a year. You don't have a year. The Bible doesn't speak of putting something off and that you might have another opportunity ever. It doesn't. And so in his declaration there is an urgency because something has come and passed and they have missed it. I don't know if y'all ever been late. I ain't going to ask some of y'all that question at all. But some of y'all who understand what it means to miss the boat, right? Sometimes there's not another boat coming. I seen this a few years ago when they were having great floods. There's this feller that was in a flood zone, and the water was rising, and the water had came up to about his front porch, had not overtaken his porch, and he was sitting outside on the porch, and a rescue vehicle, one of them hijacked up ones, come by the porch and said, "Look, the water's rising, get on the truck." And he said, "No, the Lord's going to take care of me." And a little while later, the water had gotten over the porch, and it was now, he was up to the second story window, and a boat came by and said, "Son, get in the boat." And he said, "No, the Lord is going to take care of me." And then the water rose above the second story. He finally made it onto the roof of the house, and a helicopter came by and said, "Son, get in the helicopter." He said, "No, the Lord's going to take care of me." Well, he drowned and died. And in heaven, he said, "Lord, I was counting on you to take care of me." He said, "Look, I sent you a truck, and you refused to get on. I sent you a boat, and you would not enter. I even sent you a helicopter, and you refused to get on. Don't talk to me about opportunity to deliver you." Some of you have been given ample time, ample opportunity, and you have wasted it and squandered it. That's what Jeremiah saw. Jeremiah saw people had had plenty of time. He saw the time had run out, right? The summer had now ended, and the harvest was past, and they wasn't saved. Now, in this country, this was true about a generation ago, a generation before mine, and especially when this country was a farming community. Revivals were had in the summertime, somewhere between when the crops were laid by, and if you don't understand what that means, go find one of these older individuals and they'll explain that to you, okay? Because I don't know, because we didn't have, that was past my time too. But sometime between when the crop was laid by, all right, and that's when they didn't have to work on it no more. They could have some leisure time. They could go fishing. They could do other things, and they didn't have to work the field because they laid the crop by. And sometime between when the crop was laid by and harvest, in this country they had revival season. That's when they had revivals, and they had revivals sometime in the morning and in the afternoon. I know churches did that. They had two services, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. People came from all around. I know people have told me they were saved here during revival season, standing outside because there was no room in this building for them in the 50s, 60s. That was how it was. Okay? That's how life was. There was no entertainment. People came to church, by the way, because preachers were more entertainment than other things, and so they came because they wasn't nothing else to do. A lot of lost people came. They heard about Jesus and they were saved. That happened a generation ago. It ain't happening today, okay? It near often. Not because they don't have opportunity, not because the gospel is not preached. You realize today the gospel is more available, easier than any other time in history. People don't even have to come to church to hear the message of Christ today. Most likely today, you'll be able to hear me on the internet this afternoon preach this same sermon if my daughter gets it right. Okay? Gets it right. It'll be on YouTube by this afternoon or in the morning. People, the availability of hearing the message of God has not been diminished. The trumpet is blowing louder than it's ever blown before. It has been proclaimed longer and harder than it's ever been proclaimed before. And while we might not have the same revival services, we're sure, I don't believe I preach any softer than any of those folks did back in the 50s. If I do, it ain't intentional, I can assure you. I can assure you this. It is the same Jesus that has to save today. And he declared, and this is what troubled him, this has brought back great distress upon him. He looked and saw that. He saw it coming to its end, or had came to its conclusion. He looked out and he saw those events coming to pass. And then he looked at the people, and he looked at the nation, he looked at their condition, their spiritual condition, and he knew what it was. You know, some of y'all, I will tell you, y'all not fooling nobody about where you're at spiritually. And I will assure you this, you are not fooling a righteous God. He knows. He knows. He knows where you're at spiritually. He knows just where you are. He knows if you are His child, whether He has saved you and you have received His Son or not. He knows. He knows as a child of God whether you have been deviated away from Him as a child of God. He knows. Jeremiah, the prophet, he looked at the nation he lived in. He looked at the people he lived amongst. And he knew what spiritual condition he was. Folks, it's no great shocker in America where we're at. I mean, you don't have to take its pulse real hard, right? I know where we're at as a nation. We just celebrated, I believe, 20 years past 9/11. I believe yesterday, if I'm correct. 20 years past 9/11. I know where we came from. I know where we are today. And listen, it is not the same nation that it was 20 years ago. It ain't the same nation that I surrendered to preach in. There's some activities that are made mainstream today that was not mainstream when I surrendered the ministry 30 years ago. There's events going on today that in people's lives that was just not mainstream 40 years ago. When I grew up, television, and for y'all, some of y'all make fun of me, yes, it was in black and white, but you never seen a person's belly button. Never. I'll challenge each and every one of you, go back to those old TV shows, even I Dream of Jeannie, you never saw her belly button. Ever. And if they did let that slip, they got fined for it. Today, most actors, the Best Dressed Actor Award, we're going to go to a dermatologist. Y'all figure that one out later and y'all will laugh, right? Because they don't wear no clothes. Not much, right? They may even give it to the plastic surgeon, but I won't deviate it too far. He looks and he knows what's going on, and he makes a declaration: the harvest is past, the summer is ended, and we're not saved. That's where they're at. And what did that bring? Verse 21, it brings a great distress on this individual. He says, for the hurt of the daughter of my people I am hurt. I am black. Astonishment hath taken hold on me. He saw how their true condition was. He saw the road they had went down, the path they had chosen, the course they had went down, and it distressed him. He became distraught. He looked and he saw it. I'll tell you this, there ought to be more broken hearts about where we're at, about where your neighbor is. Spiritually speaking, I want you to think about this. Jeremiah is declared to be the weeping prophet. He is an emotional prophet. He looks, he sees, and things move him. Some individuals in this, maybe even in this church body, have become past feeling. Past feeling. They've become past hearing. They have become past seeing. If you're exposed to something over and over and over again, it causes a loss of sensation. I don't know if y'all understand that. I worked in a very loud environment early in my life. And they mandatory made us wear ear protection. Every year, they mandatory us to take hearing tests to try to figure out how being exposed to a loud environment was affecting us on a yearly basis. And so they started mandating we take a test every year for hearing loss. And of course, some of us already had hearing loss. I was only 19 years old when that started. And I had hearing loss in my left ear when they started doing the test. And they were trying to figure out why. I only had hearing loss in one ear, but not hearing loss in the other ear. Not my right ear, but my left ear. They said, well, are you only wearing one earplug? I said, no. He said, well, do you shoot a gun often? I said, I grew up in Arkansas. That was a patron place of shooting stuff. Of course I shot a gun often. He said, that's what's wrong with your left ear. You might want to put them earplugs on when you shoot it too. Being exposed to something over and over and over again causes a loss of sensation. I want you to understand where Jeremiah was. Jeremiah was distraught. He was experiencing, seeing something, and it was still affecting him. It should you too. Me and you, as children of God, should never get past feeling. Ever. One of the things that Christ is supposed to do for us, He's supposed to fix our hearing. I don't mean that kind of hearing loss, natural. But it ought to fix you able to hear. It ought to fix you being able to see. Also, Peter wrote this. He said of a person that doesn't add to their Christian faith. A person who does not grow and prosper. If your Christianity stays where I described last week is only ankle deep with you, the possibility of you losing your hearing, you're losing your seeing, you're losing your senses as a child of God is greatly enhanced. He said that those people who do not add, that lack Christian addition, also suffer from being a person that has forgotten they've been forgiven for their old sins, and they can't see afar off. It's a sad thing when a child of God can't remember being saved. They can't get back to that place where Jesus Christ reached down from heaven and touched their heart. When they're so far delved down into things in this world, they can't remember and have sight of the great grace of God that has touched them. That's a sad condition. And Jeremiah wasn't experiencing that, but he was experiencing other people experiencing that. He saw their hurting. He saw what they were going through. He saw their dilemma of life, and it affected him in a very negative way. The distraught. Not only this, not only do we have a declaration and a distress, we have a dilemma. And I want you to think about this, a dilemma. Verse 22 says, "Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then is not the health of the daughter of my people recovering?" And I'm going to answer some of his questions for him if you don't know the answers. Was there balm in Gilead? If you don't know biblically, Gilead was famous for balm. They're also famous for having doctors. If you have medicine and you have a great doctor, why are you still sick? Why are you still sick? I'm speaking spiritually. If you don't know, Jeremiah's great dilemma was he knew that God could fix them. He knew they had the God of heaven, the great physician, had everything they needed to make them whole. He knew that there was a physician in Jesus Christ, the greatest physician that ever lived, could make them whole again. But yet, this is how they were. The great dilemma in our culture is that we know there's a Savior. We know He can save, but people don't come to Him. They reject Him. Also, our great dilemma as children of God is I know so many people as children of God that have failed, that continue to fail, and they will not turn back to the one who saved them, who delivered them, the one that can fix their ailing eyesight, can heal their bad ears, and fix their right vision. You see, verse 22 says that he knew that that was the case. He looked at over this sick person, and he knew that there was a remedy for what ailed them. You know, one of the tragedies is that if you're absolutely sure you have the remedy for something, absolutely sure this would fix a person, this would heal a person. You know, I know it's a terrible thing what we've experienced with this virus, because there is no clear answers. And every day it gets muddier. I will tell you, muddier. I don't have clarity about what they're telling me. I can tell you right now. Because I know people that got vaccinated, they got sick. Caught the virus anyway. I know people who not got vaccinated, they hadn't got sick. I know people who have caught it multiple times. I'm included. I know I took a medication that I thought helped that they say that ain't good for nobody. I will tell you this. All I know is this. There's a God in heaven that has the answer eternally to all things. I know this, that if you need a Savior for sin, I got the answer for you. If you're suffering spiritually, I know who to send you to. If you have a need on this earth in a spiritual way, I know the remedy. I know who can fix that. Jeremiah knew too. He knew it was available to all these people. But he watched summer come and go. And he watched fall come on. He watched the harvest end. He watched all those things. And it came to its pass. And then he looked and he saw them in the same condition, even though it was available to them. Folks, listen. If I knew there was a cure for cancer and you had cancer, I'd sure try to get you that cure. If I knew it worked, without a doubt, I'd want you to have it. I want you to take every medication that might help you. But here, spiritually, you have one that's sure to work. It's worked on every soul that's ever taken it. Without question. Every soul that's ever taken it. It will work for you. But the limit is it's available and you're not. You're not. That's what Jeremiah saw. He knew that it was available. He knew that it was available to them, but they wasn't recovered. Why are they still that way? Why are they still in this condition? Why have they chosen to go down this path and this road? That's the dilemma. As a pastor in the last 30 years, that's what I've seen. People who have this great availability of the greatest message on earth, who many have rejected it outright. Others have squandered what they got in Christ Jesus. Squandered it. They have not made full use of what Jesus has done for them. Listen, if you're only ankle deep, you ain't making full use of it. You just not. The last thing, the desire. Chapter 9, verse 1, he says, "Oh, that my head were waters, my eyes a fountain of tears, and I might weep day and night for the slain of my people." Now his distress, he asks to be more. He wants to be more sensitive to people's spiritual needs, not less. Most of us run from what causes us pain, right? What does he ask? He says, "Oh, that my head were waters, and my eyes a fountain of tears." He wants a perpetual ability to shed tears over their condition. That God can literally pour it in. Pour it in. His desire is that he can feel it more. He can experience it more. If you don't know, it takes water to get something to grow. Same is true spiritually. You ever wondered why your friends don't ever change? Well, maybe you ain't watering the plant enough. You know how many dry altars we have today that's never a tear shed on for somebody that's lost and undone? I know this culture. I know your friends. A lot of them don't know Christ. They don't know who He is. They have never experienced His saving grace. But you sit there with a dry eye and a dry head. That it was not the desire of Jeremiah. Jeremiah wanted God to pour in his skull a fountain of water and his tears could shed. Because he wanted to feel more. One of the saddest things today is that people don't feel for one another. They have become dull. Their senses have become lack. Y'all understand that most of y'all have been heartbroken at one time or another. When you lose the ability to cry anymore. When my mom died, I came to the place where I just could not cry no longer. Kind of run out of tears. I still wanted to cry, just couldn't. Didn't have the capacity no longer. They finally run out of emotion. Kind of was left numb from the experience. What Joshua wants is the ability to cry more. To be able to shed more tears. Be able to feel more. Be able to experience what somebody else may go through. It's a sad thing that we don't have more tears shed. Because I have news for you. What Jeremiah declared in verse 20 is a fact in many a life. They have squandered away their time. They have squandered away their opportunity. And time is coming to a conclusion. The harvest is coming to an end. He declares it's over already. Now I do have some great news for you. That if you're lost this morning and Jesus Christ is dealing with you, it's not too late for you. That if you have a friend that's lost, Jesus can still save them. It's not too late. But there coming a day, the declaration that Jeremiah made will be fact. It will be done. The last trumpet's going to blow. And it's going to be over. There will be no more salvations. There will be no more revivals. There will be more rededications. There will be no more individuals who get to see their loved one come to Jesus. There will be no more of that ever experienced again, because it will come to its conclusion. My prayer is it don't close on you. Let's all stand together.